Hello and welcome everyone. Oh, We are thrilled to have you join for Astraliva's Cybersecurity Bootcamp, a week-long hands-on journey into the fundamentals and advanced layer of network security. This bootcamp is designed for anyone eager to strengthen their security skills, whether you are just getting started, growing in your career, working professional, or business leader. Over the next few days, you'll cover everything from Linux basics to advanced techniques like network exploitation, privilege escalation, pivoting, and buffer overflow. With hands-on labs and live simulation, you will gain practical, real-world experience. This bootcamp isn't just theory; it's about building skills that help you think like an attacker and respond like a defender. By the end, you will have a solid technical foundation and a certification from Astraliva to prove it. Stay curious, dive in, and let's get started. Let me take a moment to tell you a bit about what we do at Astraliva. Astraliva was founded with a clear mission to combat the growing threat of cyber attacks, not just by reacting to them, but by staying ahead of them. We believe cybersecurity should be proactive, strategic, and built on deep, continuous research. Our expert team identifies vulnerabilities, runs in-depth assessment, and delivers cutting-edge solutions to help businesses stay secure in a constantly evolving digital landscape. We go beyond trends, stimulating real-world attacks and building resilience from the ground up. From startup to Fortune 500s, we help organizations strengthen defense and stay compliant with global standards. But security isn't just about defense, it's about preparation, insight, and empowering people. That's why we run bootcamp like this to share our vision and help create a safer digital world for all. Before we dive deeper into the bootcamp, we want to give you a quick overview of the kind of work we do at Astraliva. Here at Astraliva, we are not just teaching, we are actively helping businesses stay safe from cyber threat every day. Here is a quick look of what we do. Application security. We look at mobile apps, websites, desktop software, and APIs, reviewing both functionality and source code to catch issue early. Network and penetration testing. We access network inside and out, looking for vulnerabilities, misconfiguration, and weak spots in firewall and servers. Cloud security testing. With so many businesses on cloud platform, we simulate real-world attack to uncover misconfiguration and secure cloud environment. IoT security. Through smart sensor to connected machine, we test both hardware and software to ensure complete device security. AI security. As AI adoption grows, we protect system from attacks like prompt injection, data leaks, and bias manipulation. Red teaming. We simulate full-scale attacks, testing everything from users' access to system response to help companies strengthen their defense. Security code review. Line by line auditing helps us catch vulnerabilities before an app or product goes live. Security training and workshops. Just like this bootcamp, we train teams through hands-on session to recognize, prevent, and respond to threat. In short, our mission is simple. Identify risk, fix them, and empower people to stay ahead of threats. We are excited you are here and hope this inspire you keep learning and strengthening security wherever you go. All right, everyone. Next up, please welcome Nikhil, a security researcher at Astraliva with deep expertise in network security, IoT security, and research engineering. Nikhil has spent years exploring smart devices, analyzing firmware, and exposing how attackers exploit everything from IoT gadgets to complex networks. He is passionate about breaking systems down to understand and secure them. In today's network security workshop, he'll walk you through real-world attack scenarios, teach you to think like an attacker, and show you how to defend your system from the ground up. So please note, all questions and discussions will be handled in WhatsApp group, so feel free to drop your queries there during or after the session. With that, over to you, Nikhil. Thank you, Victor. So basically, this session is structured as in day one, we'll be focusing on Linux essentials, basically how Linux works, why we need to learn Linux, and getting comfortable with the Linux command line, because that is the essential skill which is required to get started in cyber security. We can't always rely on GUI, so we need to know how the CLI works. That's right. The day one entirely focused on basic how the Linux works, how to work with Linux CLI. So from day two, we are moving on to the actual cybersecurity part. For example, day two, we are entirely focusing on network enumeration, how to enumerate a network and entirely enumeration. Whether it's internal or external, how we are going to do the enumeration. Day three, specifically focusing on exploitation. Let's say in day two, when we are enumerating, we found different services. You don't know what it might do, or is there any vulnerabilities exposed. Rather than just checking the version number in CLI database or something, we will look at the vulnerability reports. Like, did somebody already reported or someone already exploited? Why this forwards? Sometimes when we are blindly running the code, we might get compromised ourselves. So we need to be careful about those techniques. We will learn on the day three, how we are sliding the network. So day four would be entirely focusing on privilege escalation. So even after compromise, we will have some low user privilege on the Linux rather than a root, which is the administrator or higher level privilege we can fill. So how we are compromising to the higher level privilege. So those type of techniques we are learning on day four, on privilege escalation sequence. So after that we are doing pivoting. So why pivoting is that word? Let's say I already compromised one machine, but it might have another. It might be connected to another network. Like it may be connected to two different networks. So from network one, how I am jumping into the network two, which may be an internal network. From an external compromise, how I'm laterally moving into the internal compromise, how I'm compromising the internal system. Those things we'll be learning in theory. Well, it's not just pivoting. We'll be covering pivoting and port forwarding. Sometimes, for example, especially when we are doing privilege escalation, we might find certain services which are running as a root or administrator. Can Linux is root and Windows 6 administrator. But they are configured to run in local network. So in that case, we can't transfer or exploit to the target machine or anything, because if there is any AV products or something, it might detect it. So if it's a network service, we can simply do the port forwarding. So whatever service running on the local port, we can forward it to our attacker machine. So it may sound complex now, but once we are going to the topic, I will explain you better. You will understand the attack story. So we could do the exploitation remote, even though the service running on locally, we just need the initial compound. So those type of attacks we will learn on the pivot thing. This one especially helpful when you are laterally moving into the internal networks. So the final would be buffer overflow. Why we are doing buffer overflow? Because buffer overflow is kind of old, and even for OSCP module, like everyone will know about OSCP, they retire the module even. But why we are carrying more buffer overflow? When we are doing engagements, they form in certain situations, especially on internal networks, they might have some thick client application. Exactly. So they might be vulnerable to some buffer overflow attacks. So all we are doing is, like, did someone already found the bug? Is there any exploit works? But how they are finding it, how they are exploiting it. So those type of things we will learn on the buffer overflow module. Like, we will pick up a vulnerable application, write our own exploit, as if it were doing on a real application. So in real world. So in that case, when we are doing, when we are reporting plan, we would say like, yeah, the form 0-day in your project. Through that, we did the privilege escalation. Through that, we got the initial form. Once it's privilege escalation, it can be initial form from us as well. So it can be a web server that has some vulnerabilities, or SKP server, or SMPT server that has some sort of a overflow vulnerability. So mostly we are attacking to get that target corruption. So these type of attacks we will learn on buffer overflow module. So yeah, I think without testing your time, you can get stuck for the next essential. Is my screen is full? Anybody? Yes. Also okay. So yeah, we know Linux. We avoid to use Linux for cyber security. What, which Linux should we use? Obviously, I will almost use Kali Linux because that's the hack of operating system. Or we could say Black Ops. I'm a pro, so I would use Black Ops. But why are specifically choosing this operating system? We can't use other Linux distribution for penetration testing. Yes, we can. I've seen people using Manjaro Linux for their penetration testing. Example, the oink preference. Hello. Someone is speaking, so can you mute yourself? Okay. So I've seen people using Manjaro Linux that penetration testing. Or some people use Arch. It's about if you are comfortable with the operating system, then fine. Even people use Windows for the penetration testing, but which we won't recommend because we are using malicious tools. Like the ABIG might detect it. That's why we don't want to use the Windows as a primary operating system for penetration testing, but it's still possible to go. But why we are avoiding is, like say you compromised a Windows machine, you need to turn in a hurry. I think the make something for detection. If you even for copying it to your compromised host, you need to keep the mimikatz in your host. That time Windows might be detected and block it or delete the file entirely. Your host antivirus. So we want to avoid that. That's why we try to avoid using Windows authentication testing. We are focusing entirely on Linux. So why Kali Linux essentially? So Kali Linux is specifically made for penetration testing. Like it had all the tools that is required for penetration testing. For example, is logging relationship. So for information gathering, we have separate tools based on what are protocol even we are investing. If you are just doing SSL or SNTP, so everything is segregated just for information. On vulnerability analysis, we have Nmap and all for scaling. So if you're focusing on web app, yeah, obviously we use both for interpreting the traffic. Apart from that, commits, like SQL for doing as validation, take off attack, WT scan for protect integration. So the phones are segregated analysis. Like this, we could find everything. If you go up to reverse engineering, you'll find the reverse engineering. So that's it. You're specifically using Kali Linux. Everything is every tool that you record is already installed. If you are comfortable with ParaFOS, you could use the Paratool. That is just another operating system for the heritage. We could easily download it from Kali.com. So just put the download section. What our preferences is, whether you are installing in a bare metal, you put down with make sure the images or virtual machine. So within a turn that the images you could even flash it on files. So it's up to your preference, and we could easily run it in mutual mode server, or even if they had a Apple Silicon like Apple laptops with the M1 chip or M2 chip, you could even run it on it. Apart from that, Parago is also there. Paradigm is another distribution, just like Kali Linux. It is made for penetration testing. Every tool says it is there's also installed Paragolis. The UI is cool. So it's up to you to choose the operating system you want. But if you wanted, you could even install Ubuntu and install all the tools manually. That way, you will learn how to install tools. Let's say, for example, if I connect back Worksuit is already installed in Kali Linux. So I don't know how to install Worksuit, but I don't know how to install Worksuit because I'm specifically using Kali Linux. If I'm just using Worksuit, won't be installed by default. So I can just Google how to install Worksuit. Through that also, I could learn something. But for the session, we need lots of tools. That's why we are sticking with Kali Linux. But generally, I would suggest install one operating system, plain operating system, installed all the tools in a query, so that if you are installing a Python module, you will face some issues. So you will learn something from it. That's why I recommend this part. Okay. So as I said, they want to be entirely focusing on Linux command line. Because if you are not familiar with the command line, the next section would be really difficult to go through. Here, some audience are from college or something. So you may or may not know about the command line tools. That's why they want to be entirely focusing on command line tools. From there too, you'll look into the actual enumeration and exploitation concepts. I hope that's clear to everyone. Yeah. So, okay. So I'm saying like command line Tamil. So what exactly is Tanya? For example, let's say I want to copy a file and open with this is my file manager. Just take one with file manager in Windows. Make that. This is for calendar apps. Click then copy. Okay, there is no very apparent Linux truth. So I just copy this desktop, paste it in documents. Yeah, this is very easy. I just did it through GUI. I were able to compromise. Not compromise. I were able to copy a science. Well, then you are weak and penetrate the state. You might only get access to a shell like this. Not even an option. In case not doing a reverse shell or Vime shell, so you'll get only a terminal access. How you will do this GUI auction? You could say, yeah, I will enable RTP and do it through RTP, but RTP won't available at every time, especially in service, because they connected a external serial monitor or something this for their configuration. So after compromising, it will take the command line shell. That's why we need to know the command line pattern. So now we did operation like copy the desktop into Tatamank. Now I'm deleting it. So what are operation I do? We are going to simulate in the Linux kernel. So usually you'll find this in the blank terminal icon. So it says like terminal emulator. So once you open it, you'll have the terminal. Oh, yeah. So the first command we'll be learning is ns, which means list files. Whatever files in my current directory, you are list. We are listing previously one. For example, if I open this file manager and see, I'm seeing lots of files like desktop, Walkman, download. Since it's a GUI application, that's why I will see. But in a terminal, nothing's listed. So using ls, I just listed these files. Whatever is on my current directory. So that's all for ends. Just listing the files. If you are moving into another directory, for example, if you are going to desktop, in a GUI application, I could feed the files. But in terminal, I can't. That's all we are using ls to list the files. Okay. Now we know ls. But from here, let's say I want to look the file. Now we know this many files are there. But how do I know? Like in Fate desktop, what files are there? That is not showing. It's only showing what are files in the current directory. But there might be files present in the other directory, for example, desktop. So how are you going to get someone already posted in comment? Yeah, see it. You have it. So basically, see it. Linux is case sensitive, so you have to be careful what you're typing. Let's say if this doesn't work, starts with capital D, which means you have to start with capital D, best down. You have to type it in. Desktop. So what is CD? CD means change directory. From a directory, I just changed to desktop. So now if I type ls, it will list the files in desktop. Currently we don't have anything, so we will create something. Next here as edit this happens. So okay, text editor. We'll open a text editor. Let's say hello. I'll send it in the stuff. Site. I named it as site. So now you have a file in desktop directory. So if I type ls now, since we know ls will list the files, we could see the files here, whatever percent of the desktop directory. Currently in desktop. So cd for changing directory. Whatever directory I have, I can change it. All right. So yeah, now I'm inside desktop. No less different. How do I go back? Again, we could use that cd, but with a double dot. Double dot means back. So whatever is there will work. That. Now we know we can back up the stuff like home directory. So what on side there it's displaying. Okay. Now they have enough of silly. You could go into the next command. So then we will look up that command again because I want to show you how they less and feed work. But they could go some average step access. So let fight stand daily staying at hidden side, or you then do the if someone create a hidden find how we web. So that type of sometimes they will explain later. Formally, we stick to the sequence. So yeah, and saying like this is my current direct. But what is current direct in it? This is whenever I open the terminal and what directory the files will make. Man, how directed? Usually it will be like, well, can it because my user is Galu. Let's say it's that's all the Linux file directory structure report. That's it for values person. Instead, and this is the default terminal no one of the default directory. But if I'm in desktop, let's say I already have a program like Kali and desktop, so I go have a desktop. But in case all you'd have is like a dollar fine letters. How do they know this directory here? Yeah, you can go just what I love is sites. So this is what the BWD government thousand. Eight of the mix print rocket guarantee. Which means whatever directory I'm okay with, figure putting the location. For example, I could be in no. So especially if you compromise the observer, you might find something like means that. So especially if you count that Mr. Afed engine itself like low some sort of thing that's like then it says I'm gonna get man silent low. It is about so let's just pure default and to delicious. But what it finishing the part federation you have in some ends. So it's like there bounce up is thoughts occasional colorness. So there we have now period in know. There's so they're doing that from a great view of it, which makes but it okay whatever my current working that different break. So now I know I'm working with working in Bob, I made a near student mount. So that is really the newspaper really. Sometimes when we only have a dollar fine like this, we might get lost what our director at the early. That's like if there isn't a bit of your but in its I created a file named a file using the Bunpod or that best of it is listener text editor. But I did it through GUI, which means graphical listener interface. I opened the application like Notepad or something, silent, YouTube, create the file. But in terminal, how you will do them. So this is where the bank translate bench. If I could have left that file, file already exists. That's it inside everything. Let's create a new file. So with that, I say link new file. So now we create a new file and we could even repeat another stone. So why we need to create files? So sometimes you are editing your configuration, you need to change settings of the default configuration is not there. So you need to create a configuration. That type of cases, people create a file. But okay, fine. But what type of file is this? For now, that's what that any unpampered site. So if you look at let us filming so it's all new. It's like NP, waves and key, because we didn't give any consent. So the file type policy ND, we don't get a no fixed. What we find of this file? For example, for Windows environment, so on a binary file, they call it EX, is EX figure file. So for PDF, for about one liquid public PDF, DPD, Excel, so most of them we follow about. Like that, people, it doesn't have any intentional editing. So it will be the one creating the file. So for now, we only serve touch them and tip create the file. But some you get view of it. Now the create frequent of file. For example, let's say I compromise this machine. I see two files like file and effect. But one go I build the content of it. In your application, I just now it work on the periphery area. It was one go. But man, come out. Oh man, this is worth the get. Get it's a side we want and file you and stuff. It'll do one of the sides we're giving us a hook as a raw bytes, like ASCII, that's piece strings. So now we only have that part and a pass statement that hello. This isn't useful especially, and you're looking at path relation for example, you see such one thing. It's and just looking at this as such fancy. Like this, I could look organize as such function. So I just reading the file. Even though there is no GUI, I will able to read and that peg understand the site. Even though it's not as pretty as looking at the looking in Excel or something, they could simply copy it and Is it in the text editor we want? Well, it was PS4 or editing, but I had like a favorite idea that it verified. So get is to build a files. Sometimes if you do a binary file, Yak would throw some something up. It will try to read the strings of perfect, but still it would throw the generator. For example, bash is a binary file. So you just do it when I'm looking at five junk it out other sticks. Some strings are present, and if I can finish that won't give what we see. So there's a lot of strings from spoken. So language people is scared. Well, okay, now we know how we created our file, but how do we create a directory? If I created a findable block leaf directory, parent pain sense, for this in the Windows term bit palette for this. Like this for Linux, leader say that. How do we create that? Or that's the command it's just or to give here. So let's say printing and signing phones. Asper. So after updating the directory, I already feel that and call to passed on. So now it successfully directory that now we know we can create files and directories. So and the first section they will think at file related conflict, how we are working with files, changing directories and this type of things. Because those are the essentials. What are you looking at this stuff? Because sometimes after compromise, you might find credential in this stock. People have habit of sailing there. Okay. Important data in the desktop, especially in an organization, I saw a lot. You will keep lots of sensitive data in a desktop. So if you are able to access some files in a desktop, you don't know what you make sign. Sometimes you might sign some that are provincial, sometimes confidential data. Anything can be possible. They usually store the files in desktop so that if easily accessible, there is a reason that is it's easy to follow our system. So yeah, now we have a directly customer. As we saw, crucially command take and get it. But so we are top going property size and move files. In GUI, we'll just do a property and move head of text. But while we will go in, command let. So there is another command, it's called C. Now you make note these are very basic command I am reading more. But there are beginners as full session, so they also they need to be comfortable with this because when they are going to provide this solution, some of the concept and steps here would be really important. If you don't know entirely how this command works, you won't give on to the operating stage. For example, if I can't run the cat as well, just as we know, cat can't read the fabs. But if you can't run it as well, what then figure out? Sensitive friends, because it's running as a book, and it's sensitive friend they can feed. That's then we need to be hard after her. Command that. Okay, so do you know you're using copy? So CP means copy, it's basically a short form for copy. To this we would copy face. So that means it will go back. So there this kind of file for the site. Now we take from. But if I enter, it says like listing business and the actor. Now we want to yield the source, make what style we want to talking. Want where to talking. That is the destination we want. We only have source. So we need to define the destination. Destination is my current director. If you use two dots, that is like go back. If you're using single dot, which makes turn working director. Which is inside the star, inside the star, after director. So if I use the knob, it copied in the after directory. You just know the after directory, so there are no files initially. But now they complete of site. If they look in build-up, it contains the same numbers. They create an interest with an Astra. Okay. Now we know how we copy does it. Let's say, no, I don't want to forget. It's entirely modifying from the directory combined. So for that, we use another command from me. So I'll use the same forward. Just the command is changing. Rather than CV, they're using enemy, which means we will move the file. Now we know Silas and Tom best. After executing this file, it vanished because we moved the file rather than copied it. See, now the file, because it's present in Astra directory. So now we know how copy and move works. So now they could say, I have lots of permanent temporary, for example. I have an output like this. This is letter I don't want with. I just want to give. Listen, if I type in comments letters, it looks like it's like they're stuck into me. How did it? I have to pay under them. So let another comment access point clear. It should be other terminal buffer. So you won't see anything on the terminal of the bed. Like one time, terminal left here. So that's the sole use of clear. Okay. Now I said lots of command like Siri and this interior. Like that interior, another command also exists for it. Um, RMBF is basically to remove the directory. Interior list next directory, RMBF list, remove directory. I create and remove the directory as per. But if I say RMD or Astra is the empty directory. Let's say for C. So that's some So what do I find? It will omit it, it will simply use a file. Because sometimes narrative might contain important data. Narrative is like a learning. That forum there is okay. So just like RMPAF, we have one more command term RM, basically remove files. Using that also we could create remote directories. If I select after or makes this thing, for example, they have a new file here, which they already did. I'll just remove the file for now. So that is that because they removed it entirely. And be careful, very careful when you remove a file from permanent, it won't stay in your trash. For example, deleted as site, a new file, but it won't be available in the trash. It won't be available like this time. Now the files take deleted from GUI. So whatever you deleted from command line, there will be there in posting. By using the same RM command, it would remove any size. There is a directory or assembly, socket connection. But in the next ever is a file. Whatever considered as a file, he put in it. So if I simply said RM, Astra, it won't unlock with us. It's a directory. RM is we're saying to remove facts. That's how you use RM GitHub, but some issues out there. I don't remember the exact command line for RM GitHub. Usually I use RM. That's it. So I found out which means because of little ticket, we are 4 fingerprint related directory. So I found out recursively. So I can delete the file inside after that it will delete the Astra. So now Astra and Socom. So now we remove the barricade. So this is where is the RM command. Here we already saw. Okay, but now it is the lots of command like Siri, Hellas, and many types. But where do they exist? That thing we really look into it in a bit. So there are other important commands as well that we need to know. Now we only looked at anything related to final like size calculation, deletion, accessing, changing the content, kind of commands. But if you have a now we know we have a user Kali because it's already displaying. But in initial compromise, you only have a shell like this from this dollar thing. So they won't know what and all the use of them. So for that, we have a secret command. Why? It should print my current user because sometimes you might be root if you're lucky. So you know by dagi who am I you don't need to do the police legislation or anything. You're already in the high to case. So now we know an accaliation. So if I were hook, so even if I would, we will see this hash symbol, but they say for now it's nothing. So now I don't know what type of user and I have. So I'm just using the main command. I would say slip, so I don't have to will very this relationality because I'm already looking. So for this purpose, we'll be using who main command. So now we saw lots of buttons, but how good? Is there any? Do I have to look at every time who will make okay? What the CD capacity? No. Usually there is a command that is for that. That's on the bed, which next 9. So isn't that it would look at manual for any command? For example, if I say like cat, man is for cat, it will open the manual and text this manual for cat. Like it present up almost every Linux operating system, you see. So you could just type cat and that command you don't know that you want to loop it. Easily you could find the use case and call in Google, but here it's like a small and this so that every can we don't have people be booked. What are the amongst you could find it? And sometimes you could even find document someone the file format or something. Put out documented in it. That could be able to forget them. So yeah, Ranka connect files and put it on the standard output, which means basically it's splitting of the standard output. Standard and standard out, these are all the file directory. Perfect done Linux because everything in Linux operator doesn't say that one you look better. So these are other parameters. Show on number long, like so less. Even some of them in the room, we are not that big. So initially I told because they used the command point, so I could even check for so IFNF will force what on file system it will forcefully if I could delete it. I finite prompt before every more so that it will say like let's say I'm monitoring one and create a file that's or I finite test it'll that's it. Well, I feel like this. It asks, do you want to delete it? Because accidentally, if you don't want to delete it, let's say if you're doing some best left or you set taking your alias, so that it'll prompt you in case if you don't want to remove the security function. So now, so so all and if there is the first so many settings. If you look at the recursive, it will recursively remove all the files at the back. That's why it didn't ask for any prompts or if they like an icon to I'm on. And iPhone did specifically for battery. MD there to remove made there. I'm supposed to show and those the one and help option. Like that we could find the related manuals and the help option what are coming from there. It will be present on every operating system. You have what 4 minutes this talk. Okay. So now we know how we learn little script. Let's say I want to run it as another user. Now I have only daily user. How many users I have in my operating system, my Linux system? Usually you will have one plus vulnerable. So the root gives that is that top privileges that you have available. It's like it could present up every Linux this operating system. You will sign the root user. It answers to everything. That's it's called root. So that root user present on every operating system one. Sometimes, especially initially when Kali Nets came, you can add up your login soon. You don't have really user pool or everything. So it's only one user. But nowadays they're saying like I'm still playing 4 or 5 years ago. But now they're saying like you have a user, you have to elevate manually to them. Because sometimes you can mess up your operating system before running a server. That's it. Now you're logging in us, telling so this is be fun for every Kali Linux operating system, unless we set to you. They can add the user self-factor. So for now, they help you up to users. But how protect user? Usually, as they know, they have option like this. Say kill unvoke, it will ask for my user and pass. So let's try root and main password. That password is thinking. It does I haven't set up a password for unvoke yet. But now you might get confused with us if I open by Google and select Windows, that's one of password. If I take root, even though does not, I don't have password, how do I escalate? Because I have password for Kali, extend my sudo. This concept we will learn and privilege escalation techniques. That's why I very able to allow. So if I say like password, I set up a new password. So I set up a password for Kali. Sorry, root user. So for that, I used a command called password, which means it will prompt for me to type the password. Now it says new password because there is no password for who. That's why directly as the new password. But for Kali user, a password is already present. So I type password. It will ask me my current password because if they didn't know my current password, I could do the previous escalation by updating the password. That thing we don't want to do. Without knowing the correct password, I can't change the password of the Kali's. There's a very sin command for Kali. If I type the correct password, it says like new password, so it will allow me to. So it will allow me to set the password. Now I have to set this right. So yeah, well, and the password set. Now I'm logged in as a because I have poor users and I were able to log in. But how do I switch user? There's a every time I can go to this log out and log in with news, and you have a no credential like a user like Kali and you want to do, you can't do a log out from terminal. So how could they do? That's why the command called is sudo key. Sudo means super user root. Whatever you want, whatever command you want to run as a root, whatever operation you want to run as a root, you can mention sudo, which means it will tell the operating system run this as root. That file that matters to is sudo. Let's say I want to run the UMI as sudo. Initially, we know if I type UMI, it will show carry. But if I type sudo, and I can't directly allow you to run as sudo because it is password protected. We need to know the password of the root, or if I'm in sudo as root, I could use my password. Since I'm in sudo as root, I can use my password. I'd run it as root, and the result came as root. Because if you run UMI as the result will be because it's run by a root system. Like that, we to run markup can have big one. Why it is required? Let's say tomorrow we'll be looking at the network enumeration. So we'll be looking at a pull part and now. Through that, we will enumerate the network ports and everything. That then, to send specific packets, which require the operating system underlying kernel level features, so that it would send the raw TCP or UDP packets it's required for the network, so that it could do the scanning. That time it requires root access, so they can't log out every time as Kali user and or directly log in as root and root. That's why the sudo command access. So I could add the sudo command before the scan, so it will run it as root. Whatever thing I recommend, I can run it as root. Let's say we have command called sudo. Let's say I want to entirely switch to a root user. We have another command called su, but for that, as RPM, we have to specify the user we want to switch in with. Let's say I want to switch into root. It is asking for the password of it. If I have another result called Nikhil. Currently, Nikhil doesn't present. That's why Nikhil does not exist or the user does not contain all the required fields. That's why I can't switch into Nikhil. If I have other user, I could do this SU to the user name and use the end password to log it. Like this also, we could change the user. So password command they are related to it. Now we need to know some network facts. Like even though you have that shell like variable like this, you won't know what you're doing. So let's say initially I got confident if I'm doing an internal BD, expression of the client record, whatever your company gives you. Let's say I have a compromised machine that is like this, but I'm not sure whether it's connected to the internet or not. But yeah, I could check the IF punch sale. It will show me the internet. But what if it's configured only to the internal network so that it won't work with the outside one? It can only communicate to the servers or anything that are hosted internally to the organization. Apart from that, it will do the whole thing. So how do we check that? I have internet access. So there's a basic command called ping. Through that, we could use an IP address or the DNS pings. For example, I would use one command for ping. It is the Google DNS. So if I ping it, I'm getting a response, which means I have connected to internet. But if I don't have internet access, for now, I'll just say hello. So ding, data. Access network is unreachable. Even though I might have an IP, for now, since I disconnected a remote IP, but in an internal network, you will have an ID. So how do I know? Like that, the good is the ping. Okay, ping is fine. What else we can do? I just know I got internet access. But in internal networks, I found the web friendly. So for that, we could use a command called curl. Basically, it will fetch the URL. How we will browse in uh, a browser. So it will simulate that, but rather than doing it through GUI, you will do it from command here. So what HTML do? Content scripting, whatever result from the server, it will print. For now, it says like 301 move. Then you'll type on browser google.com. It will automatically redirect to the google.com, whatever it's refer. So it's redirecting to http colon www.google.com. So we could directly fill that. So once it is at google.com, this is a JavaScript and the HTML files that are being loaded on the google.com. So the result we are seeing in command line. Why it is? Let's say you found a web server on your internet network. Through this, you could just try the curl to see whether you were able to access it or not. Sometimes you need to download files. Through ping, we were able to just check whether the network is available or not. But curl and another command called the breaker, which are also do the same operation like curl. Only the syntax is a little different. The command line arguments. So when we are doing some sort of file transfer, they just host the file in some server and they can download it remotely. Oh, no. Let's see. Really, that thought. All I need is the URL endpoint for the file. Inside the MSLOF file is moving. So here we could see, once I click on the download icon, it's like in the bottom it says like Kali Linux 2025 W16 inch or something. I just right click and do copy it. So now I copy the link. I could use the wget curl command to download. For example, if I said like curl, item says the raw data. No. So let's put wget to download the file up. So might be the updated curl would look like, okay, this file is a binary data, so I don't want to show it. That's a nothing in out of curl. If you direct text file or something, initially we made a request to poopin.com. That's why it showed us. Now I could see it actually downloading the file. It says like 8 hours to download because I'm inside of the internet of the be kind of slow. That's why. So using Control C, we could cancel an operation, whatever is happening. So here I did the Control C so that it canceled the download. Still the file is present, but it's partially downloaded, like 2.8 megabytes. So now I removed the files also. Now we know how duplicate and both. This is really useful, especially when you're transferring your payloads. Like say you compromised a machine, you need to transfer some files or payloads. Or you sorted the server on the top of the machine, so you can download it through HTTP or HTTP server that you created. That way we are using this duplicate. Okay. Now, there are so many commands. I said like this command, that command, this will do that, this will do this. But where they are stored, how it's working. So usually whatever command we are using, it's just a file, like an executable file. Like let's say you're downloading a cave like gkit, which will exe file like gkfile.qt, which is the game and the book. Once you double click it, you will on the file. But the Linux, you will on the executable file. In Linux, everything is set file, even it's an executable object file or PDF file, everything is a file. But this type of files are said like ELF files, which means how we are saying exe for Windows. Like that in Linux, we call it ELF, executable linkable format. Basically, these are the executable formats supported on Linux. So everything would be stored on. This bin user is being then of direct. Here they could find the by release. The command line whatever there is. For example, I'm just using CPU to copy a file or who am I build, but it makes so. But where if there's an to find it before it's a command accomplish, it needs the where the file is stored. Effect like bench, access later storing, user being born, which means in the user being directory, this UML binary present. That is the reason we were able to accept UML card. So now you know this is existing user being born, where I'm not using user being born, and I don't know I receive wrong. If I use the foot part, that will absorb. But in your next need how to put found or the variables. Oh, it will. So this will show me thumbprint. If I page some command, it will go through this entire instruction. For example, first it will go up Kali, assign bomb, Kali, the blah thing. So it will search, well, let the worm is present here when I fake word. No? Then it will go village spot. Everything is pollen separated. So second it will go to user localized thing. If it's presented list, or user is thing, or is thing. Why this is important? Through this work, we put exploit and purely this collision both in Linux. I say this is also important. User non thinking, user sim. Like this, it exists the all the directive. If it couldn't find it's link the command does not exist. For example, I may a little for site X or Astra. This command does then exist. That's why if we select all not fault. Well, if we found such a file, not the other one ask past prepare executable file, it will execute that. Or no doesn't it's the desert. It may has been. Hello? Is it audible now? Is my screen visible? It is. This is okay. For a second, for some reason, I heard about that. Okay then. So I had to get a weird command part equal dollar bug. But what does this echo? What does this dollar bug mean? So that would be build. Usually opponents, answer says it will build it will go equal. But something can be like equaless and just print a command build terminal. Why it is that word? They can do many things with this echo, whether it can be using files on executing poll or redirecting the output to another file using bytes, redirection operators. You put automate stuff some fast scripting and lots of things we could build the table. Even though the output looks good. As I said, like for a lot will just bring well, I could redirect the file. I could do lots of stuff. The say echo is important. Usually we'll use a profile printing. Let's say I have a like first I want to store it in a file called greetings.txt. So I'm using another weird operator like an arrow one. So this pointing to the file exit direction, which means author of printer redirect to this file automatically to create the file. Initially, we saw like using touch we created a file, then manually we are adding the content. But through this, we put on the file already in the greetings.txt file. So as they say, it's created in the desktop directory. If you open it, we put feed hello text. Because I feel pleasure with that. Or else, if you have a fine leg, touch. So we do create a second file. Do not txt. For knowing this name, it does pugak.txt. It doesn't have any files. So sorry. We have created a file on who have tasted. I'll just using some number of I'll redirect to who.txt. So contains size of data. But if 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is only entered. So that is exist. So that we will use the redirection operator. Works in pocket. I think, as you see, the police copy get a head of comments. As I copy and param left face to list and view the face. But you see the hope. They could redirect to another file. It can be anything like it's in CAC also they could redirect. It's not just for echo. Redirection operator it could use for any Linux command. But if it supports long clip. For example, I could board it is zip password, which is a file in Linux. So I could view the file. I could redirect the output to the pull.txt. The lot on 2, 3, 4, 5 the file with the pull.txt. But now I just scattered the GC password file and redirect the output to 2.txt. This is where there is the redirection operator and in hope for printing. So they are chaining comments basically. Next, the biggest advantage is chaining the command, which means and using a command to execute something and sending out the proof another command. So that will execute another, for example, and just leaving with cat. What? And just using the label file icon cat. But to read anything to update file, I just copied the file. It was that one get the same input. Like this for to chain unlock. This is especially then for when you're writing one letters. If they were writing 10 commands manually to enumerate the file or my book. To enumerate the file on a go. You could just simply write a think one letter who automate everything. So that follow it to be really improved. So one such example would be, so I'll just show the password fed. It contains a data like this. Like you don't understand it. Like there are so many things like some guarantees and stuff. So usually password fed and then the user and the related information, work out the logging shell they have. Initially for Linux, it's used to score the password for chillum, but now that is stored in before in Cyber Shadow. So for now, they'll just look at get and the password set. Now we know the password for silas letter. So what is useful information here? Password friend contains on the users in your operating system. For example, boot, candy or Mickey, what on user present from his operating system. etc passwords are anything. So I just get it for bash. Because bash are CFit. Since it's tally, I use to CSH. That is our default shell. Okay, what up, bash? Nothing. So ZSH is the default one, but I changed to bash for families. So whoever have the bash, they had a potential, we had a potential user. For example, now get when that much output, we just separated only three. Mirror means just free it out. What is particular good? And just saying bash, what and thank the third bash, just show that list. Long with that, 3 and base on him. So I don't have a little bit back. And there, PM30 is boss thing. This is what I found chaining. So you used up by operate that. So they'll cat the file, send the input to the repository, send output to the repository input. Set take input and refer the dashboard, wherever the bash is present. For example, now we know bash, group embed the bash. So it's a user, we already know. But if we say Kali are some epics there, which is our stuff. But apart from then, there is one more, is a point Postgres. It is what Postgres says still. But this is also content bash, but it's a false positive. This user actually is not like the user exists work. That is for the service Postgres SQL. So that owning a group of Postgres, they can access this related information. Picked up. We don't teaching at user thing. So they are all for discussion. Now me set them home. Sort out the using both now the machine. Better yes in spike one. Yeah. So file reaction we are ready for one full stop. So if now we cover about most of the essential Linux commands. Now get over the next file system. So if I just typed ls, yes, ls type really. But why did I type ls? I could put ls bit. It's a type like ls. It just showed the directory file. But typing no command line. That's I could do a lot, for example, ls type from pn. It will show the long use file. So slash is all of who can it be? Not for the user, the embedding at that slash is second directory. So from there, what on finding out stuff. For example, just think, bring against the vulnerabilities, which is the end user. So is anti-ding bash, shooting, learns, most of them could be sorted. User big. Items are singularities. Work on thanks the Wookerland, the related files or something. It's right. I could find a kernel and a book not a point, plus 5% la udare feed. With the check dairy. What aren't the other steps? This is something you're going to turn up if I'm plugging in none. So and in another, if I'm plugging in a keyboard and walk out the which okay, none of the spirit looking would be lifted on the PV. Something the level. I guess if we don't want boom that can look at what's so Billy is up. Edishing. So what is edishing? Edishing can mix, etc. It can basically on the configuration side. If you had been stolen. So these are the lines in the APC directory. This condenser configuration files for the software next time. If it had word for configuration file. But there's some, if I install again FTP server, those configuration be stored on this directory. Somewhere, if you're using an SSH service, those configuration tying is to. If you're covered as configuration, those things will be stored on BGT. Also the configuration from immediacy. So if you're then able to read some sort of sensitive data of something from PPC then I think, again may probably escalation. By monitoring certain files and UTC, they could build up with a discussion as well. Along, especially have been able to find and remaining. So be how think about LD on sort of call. If you are able to provide it this like, you could even install a rootkit. So you would load your own malicious by getting and deep even you shall your own, you shall and get that is also positive nowadays. So that's it. The CTC quite out for something. This is very important. Let us so many configuration exist. So after UTC, we have a directory called hope. Apart from rookies, who all want to store a file, like whatever it is for their is, it is allocated on the home directory. Let's say in file it wouldn't for now I only have Kali such as it file into for telling. But if I have really used a polykin, I have one for the kim. So when I'm bagilas Heli, I will work in that Heli that. May I log in as Nikin, I work inside that BQ directory. So even if I delete the file in desktop, it won't be the same for Mikilism. Because they are not sharing the same directory. You'd apply your home directory, share and befriend you something. That's the home system. So it already are the letter will the turn on the work it is just a signaling to the Faribisam. So lid, what is loop? Now the names are this has got libraries, but working aggregates. It's similar like your DLN files. In Windows, before I'm starting a software, you might list some barriers, especially games. When in copy again, you might some barriers. So there are different MC files to run the execute of them. Because if you're creating a embedded executable, that would take so much space. So and then they could write modules. Next, doing some sort of operation. They have a module from OpenSSH. We have library from OpenSSH. So if I'm running a program that requires a system, you don't have to lead the SSL implementation this. They could simply port it from OpenSSH. So everyone can port it from OpenSSH. What don't buy it in about application and libraries. They can make OpenSSH like the reading who will look at for person. So that I simply log from space. That's it, the slang already existing. So in Circus library, you find love for light unit first. They're bound to pencil extension. So the advanced Shabbat the other is. It's either the standard that I could report and find something for late open system something. Open SSH with being in. So we library first. But on a port we can pick if it did. Through that also like the world education, which means the name of the cover of his there. Like very different. In Las Vegas first doing some lives that is not so good. Nelia, if you are plugging in a harness, for example, design plugging in an external hard disk that will be go under in a year. So that I would look at whether the hard disk has been connected. MNT for bonding. Usually this is percent if you're not opting inside so that before bonded to the step tip or it's really not that much. If you want it mounted, you need everyone. Sometimes operating system might fought for this another character so that they could mount it because it surely we know MNT is some other Linux operating system. So I enter this to the moment for other reasons, basically. So that you don't have to hear about fellow stump people, but they have a lot of. OPK is for fortunate. As you know, they saw VTC directive, which had some considerations. But functionally, it's stored a bit of OPK verification rather than EDC. But it's an instantiation, so it can be binary file or anything. If you don't want the forwarded, if one location you need to store it some other point, arrange it out to be consistent in every operating system, people then OPK. Having prop, this is related to funneling heading. They're looking at the process running on the system. So the related information and the process idea of the thing say that reporting on him for better hand they will learn people very simple that and there so this stuff. So root book now we don't form that one you said little, but there will be a root there the root you said facts. There's this root access to Aram they don't tell any permission, that's why it says the permission needed. Is there running a smoke before list of files and book? Because I don't want to accidentally look into the files and root there and read. I was talking in next sanction to speed for crashing. That's why should follow bespeak leg. Was this following decent? Being clan that's been his influx was binaries and SRB. So the southern people were committing. They are all this normal faith, which are that best important. Apart from they got the variable extent of like an ability. It might have lots of information for example. Anything related to book server meant and then the commutator it's the state mind. They find the fun in that stage. So mentally I'm sitting where I should take these so one's setting on my computer. Thirdly, there's no the shitting is a lot of things, but if I'm running a circuit data server, a good look for the night. That's not a stupid page by example systems to give. So that is present, but it's not enabled. Slide who's can list enabled. And transits. So I could look into the index statistic in there. Phenomenal. There's a different thing, but Apache Cube. They're suggesting instead. After modifying it, we could even bolster one up so 1%. This are usually the service they could do. At our flats, I don't panic. They will just post the application and the revenue directly. Based on those are there, and so they are going to be posted on later. So like that's even fine you. But sorry, sing some nation electric too. Nothing that one guaranteed. Let's see what who is logging something you might find on a word long. So better student for the best is inshallah. It will get it to a corner who's that first. So I have a thing but I built log because I studied the study we should have done the info and whoop log they have with whooping it creators have a city else that would be struck dead and some other boys. For the index the house of indirectly funded this. Make the two slides of destroyed on it then. Mark that. So it colored most of in submission that is the one more bit they haven't covered the use of bone sheets and why here is in this long stick fights like out from LS why here is in this amax. So it's like egg lesson your lines writing by egg plus eggs again. It's like pitch for you got on the arm and Cali sometime and the funny thing. This is longest thing if we do. This is the position we have up of it. The user wants the file above flow, no wants the file. Size of a file. The Buba takes the file of Drave one bytes. And it's great out of tape out of for switches today. Time that says the times 11 that you date. Even those nights of dick and your skin on. The reason is, in my career, how to have it is not properly. Search the thing is yellow thumbing still on. So that I listen all, maybe it's turn on again. That fluid seems depends on, but if you're buying synchronous, you would find the opposite wicked. So then you and you spend it to ensure that shouldn't have fit you. For example, initially it only showed flu, not hidden size. Initially, when they ran NS, I showed two funds. But here it is yet thought and not got. Let's use like CD. This is just for operating system. Say, we don't have it okay. But when you have a hidden file link, we meant. Så en kunde bara find just more that, valbakhyden. But now you're in Wopo find it in about pre-6, here to go as a hidden fish. So they're going to show in their directory. They say there is in the Vavanfo, the left take that body. And it's all of that be the longest people. Now we see hidden file fixes. That is the reason we are receiving a hyphen. But XANDS will finger 3.1 provides just let cover in how many look I think because you might be an opinion some bigger face. Like that's just a bigger one. Just left really 9 at 416 rather than topping and what they go will let 5 feet that office. They have another option for and let hits, which means human rhythm. It is doing a human brain about 4, it is 1.3 net topic, so I don't have other computation done. Now I don't know, this binary is 5.3 net other success. It can on fund of a geovic, terabic, that of what dog pizza. So at the hedge fan of that, it will show the fan. Unless it lags about it. It just be nice. So love you could be human rate of itself rather than illicit. So it showed human rate of fall. I want acting that mix. This is why I'm using Rudist elevators, cuprafellers, LSL. But point is that is really important for a hidden fit. Because in my data pre, if I prove less hits, I don't see any hidden tracks of ones from the one I deleted. But it's like do it in my home there to what Garib. For example, this is the character Gary. Where they say Lupin Pulant. Here they have lots of hidden tracks. Guys, history, best logo, special C. These are all related logins. Cash, antique, after that will stuff. But they are ones seeing those hidden face it. They have gained embedded plan with Sure, we done pipes. Now we are looking to get it insights in our fine marriage. But in order to reduce that other mass, it is like no. But we're stop monk months up. What for that face you diggled oh for around on the next something. See profiles yes as few. So if you know someone there gonna pay they can look in good of these that see and bash out the fives. And when you're looking at best as config, this SSH piece will be stored on the dark SSH directory. So you could read the piece here of self, get the hand updated key, which you're able to read. So, they're going to say to build some sort of further discussion. That's it. This, I mean, most of the time I use stainless layers so that I want to stay here and that at piece it's running. So, yes, get spawn for grid, it's a lot of most validation shield damage, but word for that session. So tomorrow, we'll be looking at, as I on an explain before, looking at interpretation, but extravision work, how the rubber in the recording the solo for the type of patterns. So there's younger days, get the interest of upwards a dig. Tomorrow, the enumeration model delay visit, like how you to, how to provoke work, how to look at using and manpower, a little bit open services, what it made it feel offer it, it's a standard sovereign things. After that, we is normally going interpretation in certain cases. Rather than using metasploits for everything, they be looking at the next flights or gain out. Is it to find out a lot of it? Some big type to cross exploit ourselves, really. Made that a good room for the next day. One thing's my addition pop. Most of the things have been manually there because part of mention for just when they want to own this stuff. Yeah, they like do it and there's nothing to take. Worked on. Looking at this, they don't face and human activity there, people need to abandon. Even here, a complaint. The lawyer don't have that about it. The work on a stick project. Like, you're going bad if you give a chill access to be good. You don't know what be like. It is possible. Like, to sticky loyal or is sometimes on skin. If possible, for and or student mixer. It down make you that much. That's the yeah, human impression is like way. Everything. That you're reading the pic. You have to remember that you have to remember. You have to remember more than the line system bear in the lump. So that you know where is qualifying how to paste that if you're bigger thinking that's slow, you're starting to slow. So looking at five function, you know how Bob is. That can I ever get a polarization and despair in the pool. You are able to think like, okay, can I hear them broke under this parameter? They just for the session, I'm creating a custom for legislation. After the session, you'll get answers to again the to practice for legislation and be getting little of labs. So for now, we are just looking at the default file. What are present on it editor so the default which she but for resulting on so yeah. Well the rewarding and prioritization and creating a separate here. So that is good practice that if I got this. So that's one fun to baby. Begin at internet and find from tomorrow. So I don't know if you had you could foresee in the luck to group and happy game. It could reach out to near Haku. Thank you, participants, for joining. They continue session more epic. Thank you. Thank you, Mom. Editing.